minority leaders in both houses and their deputies, as well as whom they will be fronting to the chairman of the powerful watchdog committees. Given that Jubilee Party enjoys majority support in both houses, it is highly unlikely that the Jubilee lineup for the top houses seat will be challenged. Chris Dairo, KTN News, Nairobi.
Tune in for wall-to-wall coverage of day one of the 12th Parliament tomorrow only on KTN News. Chris Dairo, Patrick Amimo and Geoffrey Kirui will be keeping an eye on things for us at the Parliament buildings. The Supreme Court will this Friday deliver a verdict on the second presidential poll petition under the 2010 Constitution. Tonight, our political affairs reporter Moremi Mwangi looks at the likely Supreme Court scenarios and highlights key evidence tabled by the legal teams of President Uhuru Kenyatta and his rival and petitioner Raila Odinga.
For a second time in just 4 years, the spotlight is on the Supreme Court, as these 5 men and 2 women sitting at the country's top court prepare to validate or invalidate the re-election of President Uhuru Kenyatta.
For you to invalidate the presidential election, cogent evidence must be shown. For example, that in the border town of Mandera, there were 20,000 foreigners who voted who are not entitled.
Your lordships and my ladies will find out that this election was a shambolic election.
The National Super Alliance is banking on the scenario where a majority of the 7 judges invalidate President Kenyatta's win and order for fresh poll. But this will depend on whether the weight of the evidence unearthed from the scrutiny of the IEBC systems and the audit of Forms 34A from the polling stations, Forms 34B from the 290 constituencies, and the Form 34C used to declare Kenyatta's win.
People voted.
To occasion a nullification, pundits argue this evidence has to meet a threshold that substantiates NASA's assertion that the elections were shambolic.
That there were no security features required on these forms?
It is not a requirement of the law.
It is not a requirement of the law?
No.
But did these forms have security features?
Yes.
From what we have gleaned from what was granted, my lord, it will be established that even the account of the chairman was being used for deletion of information.
There's a threshold that is required in law upon which one has to meet. You don't just come to court to complain. You must bring evidence. And it's not just the evidence, but the probative value of the evidence must be asked to discharge the burden of proof.
But NASA also wants the Supreme Court to depart from the 2013 verdict that excluded rejected votes from the tabulation of percentages of votes garnered by candidates in relation to votes cast. Under this strategy, NASA hopes to slash President Kenyatta's percentage below the constitutional threshold of 50% plus 1 and therefore occasion a runoff between Odinga and Kenyatta.
The court will need to analyze and see to what extent does the improprieties mentioned by the petitioner warrant interference.
If you get 50%, you've gotten like any other person. But if you've added 1 vote, more than 50% means then you have a majority. So it's a question of majority that we're talking about. So the majority must have elected you. And if that threshold is lower, then it means you have not been legitimately elected.
Yeah.
But should a majority of the judges arrive at a finding that the August 8th polls were free and fair, and the final declaration of the winner valid, then President Kenyatta will brace up for his second term. Article 141 of the 2010 Constitution directs that the president's swearing-in ceremony should be held on the first Tuesday, following 7 days after the court verdict upholding the election. A similar scenario would play out if, for whatever reason, the judges' quorum falls to an even number and there's a tie